All right, now, listen to me. I'm real tired. I've been running and killing all day. I haven't even had time to stop and have my dinner. You understand? I'm hungry. And when I get hungry, I get kind of mean. You know the feeling, don't you?
We are talking Tour of Duty Season 2, Episode 10. And this one is directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who is actually a director of one of my favourite films of all time, Fright Night Part 2. He also directed Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which was the non-Michael Myers Halloween movie, and probably one of my favourite ones, to be honest. So here we have an episode which has two storylines, rather than the kind of the 3 or 4 that so dogs this particular kind of season. So we have one story that involves McKay as our central character. Bravo Company at the beginning of the episode are on a mission, and McKay sort of drops them off and then kind of gets shot down on the way back. And it's essentially him trying to evade capture by the VC. His crew are killed, it's just him left alone. And kind of Bravo Company asked kind of volunteers to go out and try and rescue him. That's kind of one of the storylines. The other one involves Purcell. In the mission at the beginning, they kind of come across a Quaker woman who is kind of helping local villages, etc. And they kind of rescue her, but then she's later on in the episode, she is in a kind of a seedy district of you know, one of these kind of like town places, and she's a couple of guys are trying to rape her, and Purcell manages to save her and kills one of the rapists. But because of her Quaker beliefs, she won't kind of like speak out on his defence when he gets arrested for murder. So there you're kind of your two kind of storylines. Now, what do we think? So Purcell is probably the most unlucky person in this kind of whole kind of series, because obviously he was the one that was messed up after he kind of accidentally kind of shot a child. Now he's accused of murder for, you know, helping someone, and this kind of, I think, all builds to this kind of downward spiral that will kind of see Purcell go on kind of later on in this sort of series. And you've got to think Purcell was one of the kind of the most enthusiastic in the kind of the first episode. He volunteered to join the army. He wasn't, you know, conscripted and things like that. So, you know, there's just kind of those building blocks that kind of you really chip away at one's psyche, you can think. So that was quite interesting. It's kind of like a good kind of character moment in regards to the, you know, Purcell's ultimately his fractured sort of psyche. And he even says in this particular episode, he's kind of seeing everyone as an enemy, and he's kind of really having trouble kind of controlling his kind of rage. So that was, I think, some great kind of character work here. I think the beginning of I keep calling these movies, the episode was quite strong, because the mission that they are initially on is to retrieve fallen GI bodies, and it's quite a sort of spooky, you know, start to the kind of the episode where we just see all these kind of GI bodies kind of laid out. And obviously Tommy Lee Wallace, really a horror movie guy, to be honest, so he, you know, he adds that kind of creepy kind of factor to it, which I think was good. And it's nice to see McKay get something to do. I always think that character seems somewhat kind of superfluous in many ways. Here he actually has kind of something to do. What do I think maybe doesn't work in this particular episode? I think, you know, one of the criticisms with this season is that the infusion of more female characters. I've mentioned it before in a review that vets from the Vietnam War have said they've never seen this amount of like American women when they were sort of serving in Vietnam, and here's another one. And, you know, she's very pretty, she's all kind of like made up, her hair's, you know, perfectly kind of like you know, styled and makeup and stuff like that. I mean, not overly done, but it's kind of, it's there. And I was just like, is this, I mean, I don't really know much about Quakers, to be honest with you, but it's kind of not what I'm envisioning. And I have to say, I found her character somewhat overly obstinate. I mean, I understand she has these unorthodox beliefs, considered by many at least. But I don't know, she seemed particularly difficult. I mean, there's a sequence when Anderson basically says to her, look, you know, I know you won't sort of say Purcell was acting in self-defense, because you can't 100%, you know, say that, but you can at least say these guys were attacking you before he kind of came in. And she's like, she won't even do that. And I'm thinking, well, I don't, you know, if you're, you know, you only speak the truth, that was what was kind of going on there. You know, so I don't know. I think that was a little bit poorly handled in regards to kind of her character, and she's pretty unlikable. And like, you know, Purcell ultimately ends up being the kind of the bigger man at the end, kind of not letting him, or at least externally, kind of affect him too bad. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't really know much about Quakers, to be honest, but it just seemed like she was somewhat kind of miscast, and like I said, a pretty obstinate character, to be honest with you. McKay's kind of storyline, I think, was fine. You know, he ends up in a kind of a firefight, and he kind of uses his signature kind of like rock and roll tunes to alert the Bravo company to the VC kind of laying in wait, which is very kind of typical of him. So it's a pretty good episode, and I think the best thing I can say about this is that kind of those character moments with Purcell, and that growing kind of resentment to the world, basically, and his kind of his slowly unraveling, which you know at this particular kind of point in the kind of the season, you don't really see coming just yet. But it's coming kind of down the line. But you know, when you think back to all of these things that Purcell has gone through as a character, you know, it all adds up. The only thing I think I would say is Johnson is completely missing from this episode, and it's not mentioned. I mean, I guess they could have, you know, he could have been on leave or something, but I thought they would have at least mentioned it, but he just isn't in the episode. So I don't know what happened with him. I think, you know, if someone's not there and he's part of that same company, maybe you should at least acknowledge it, but because obviously when the Goldman and Anderson asked for volunteers to go and look for McKay, he just ain't there. So yeah, but overall it's a fairly good episode. I don't think it's an absolute banger, but it's still a better than average for sure. So I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.